So you wanna climb the Tower of Barbs, right kiddo? Well, you can't do that if you can't climb to floor 50. You thought the game was over after the 4th boss, right? You thought that's all the pain and suffering the game has to offer. You also probably thought that I was gone. Well, you're wrong! We're picking up right where we left off, where we beat Taro and we went up the escalator and we finally get back to the waiting room and find that the tower grew a few floors taller. Funny how that works. So basically, floor 41 to 50 now exists, which serves as the last challenge the tower poses for us. As expected, it's not gonna be a cakewalk, so here's everything you can do to prepare for the worst. So as soon as you head up to floor 41, the 6-star all-rounder will be unlocked. Using this fighter is crucial if you want to survive the remaining floors. The fighter costs 100k kill coins, but trust me, it's worth it. But if you're still struggling to pull together cash for this fighter, my go-to would be the TDM as always. Just sort that list according to rank and fight the ones below rank 50 and you'll have the money in no time. As soon as you get your hands on this fighter, level it up as soon as possible, so make it eat the egg shrooms or gold animals you've been saving, or make it unalive everything that moves in the tower. Now that we've got the proper fighter, all it needs now is the proper gear. At this point, a lot of gears require red or purple faction medals. One of the easy ways of getting red faction medals is through the weekly quests. It would only require you to beat a certain dawn on the tower and you get 3 of the red faction medals. The target dawn rotates every week, so keep an eye out on this. Another way is to recycle all of your unused premium decals in the hernia vending machine. At this point, you've probably pulled on the decal gacha and have been disappointed multiple times. This is your opportunity to swap out those decals for some red or purple faction medals. Lastly, as always, you can get red medals and even 5-star materials from the merchant on the 27th floor every Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. So once you've grinded your gears to 4 stars and 5 stars, you're going to want to get decent decals. You'll need some form of sustain up there because you won't be playing perfectly, so get a vampire decal. There's gonna be a lot of poison attacks up there, so grab a poison eater, and after that, it's up to you to fill the remaining slots. I personally attached the free non-premium barbell, diamond, and heavy tank decals we got early on those remaining slots. I hope you've been saving those decals as well. Now that we've locked in the prep work, you're finally ready to take on the remaining floors. So a few things to note. You're only allowed to bring in 5 items and that includes everything you're wearing. For this reason, I bring a full set of armor and 2 of my best weapons. Also beforehand, I make sure to eat a life shroom because the buff lasts until you drop to 0 HP and they ain't gonna count what you ate. Now that you're in, you should probably know that all the enemies here are haters, so they're a lot smarter than the enemies we're used to, so don't underestimate them. This means sneak around, use mushrooms, and don't pull your punches, but more on that later. On these floors, the escalator connections will always be the same, but the layout for each floor is a randomized tile set from any of the previous 40 floors, and all environmental treasure chests only contain kill coins. Also, there are no elevators here and you can't turn back once you've ascended to another floor. So you might be wondering, how in the world will I get back? Well, depending on where you go, there are these dead-end floors which contain a bunch of materials and this tryptamine dispenser. Once you drink from this, you'll get teleported back to your base. To figure out where the teleporter rooms are, just check the sheet that I shared a while back and plan accordingly. This area is filled with tier 5 and tier 6 materials, so this will be your farming area once you start needing them. If you want to test the waters and get a feel of how things are up here, you can go for rushing to Gayu, which is the nearest safe room from floor 42. For areas which only have one escalator leading in and leading out, like Irioka, it's worth noting that they can sometimes turn to shop or 3 floors. Shop floors are self-explanatory, there's no enemies and you can find a shop here. Only catch is that you can only buy 3 items, so if your gears fall apart, these are good places to restock. 3 rooms are these weird rooms with a holographic tree and a bunch of chests and materials scattered all over. It's just a free floor from my perspective, so just be glad when RNG is on your side. You'll also begin to notice there's these tiny metal boys which open up in the beginning of each floor. This is Dustin. He can take 5 of your items back to the reward box in your waiting room for the cost of 1 death medal. Not something I'd recommend if I'm being honest, but hey, go use him if you think it's worth it. The last thing that's different here is that sometimes the escalators get locked by a red wall which can only be dispelled by unaliving a bunch of haters on this floor. Speaking of which, I guess now's a good time to talk about them. There's really no other threats here besides the traps and the haters, so let me show you how I deal with them. First off, there's two types of haters, the ones with a red name box and the ones with the black ones. The ones with the red boxes are usually tougher, well equipped, and won't puke when you poison them. They also drop loot crates, which will either contain barbed meat, materials, or red or purple faction metals. The ones with the black boxes are mostly there to lower your guard or break your gear, as mostly they drop in a few hits. You can also make them puke by poisoning them, leaving them open to attacks. So there's two things you need to consider when fighting haters: your gear and theirs. Since you're playing Let It Die, all your gears are made of wet toilet paper which fall apart after a few hits. You also need to consider that the effectiveness of your gear drops with respect to its durability. This means that your armor that can block a bunch of damage when it's in pristine condition won't be very protective once it's taken a few hits. This issue can be remedied by uncapping your gear, which gives your equipment an exponential durability boost. You can go for this, but back in my day, we didn't have this feature, so I climbed the top without uncapped gear. This is to prove a point that it could be done. Thankfully enough, haters drop their gear frequently here, so you can use these for the weaker haters and use your best gear for the red named haters. This brings me to the next thing to consider, their gear. Since you're playing Let It Die, all the main enemies are all the same sexy ass fighters with different genders and hairstyles. The only distinction between them is that their attack pattern is determined by what weapon they're using. So as per my last video on haters, please check it out if you haven't, the best way to deal with haters is to bait out their attacks by showing your backs, then hit them on the openings presented when they miss their combos. Always make sure that you're fighting them one at a time. If you face one in a room filled with traps, there's nothing saying you can't pull them away from the room. Just run out and let them follow you. There are also general ways of dealing with them which I like to employ when dealing with particularly tough haters, which I like to call cheesing them. One of these cheese tactics is throwing a frog shroom and hitting them with non-interrupting attacks while they're blinded. So something like an assault rifle or a nail gun. Of course, bursting them down with unblockable rage moves is also a viable option, but if their armor is particularly tough, I like to whittle down their armor with weapons which deal a lot of tiny damage. For me, the best way of doing this is knocking down the hater with a fist rage move and shredding their armor with something like a flamethrower or an iron. It might not be enough to kill them, but by the time they get up, their armor would either not have enough defense or will be destroyed completely, making them easy targets either way. Another thing to note is that some weapons have unblockable attacks. So something like a saber alternative attack or the regular shots of the Magnum can get through haters' defenses. Lastly, you can use other buff mushrooms which allow you to make your hits unblockable, like the Umbrella Shroom and Slow Mungus and their variants. Those were the general ways I employ to deal with tough haters, but here are some specific weapons I particularly hated during my climb. For assault rifle haters, you can dodge twice every time they fire, and 90% of the time, they'll miss their shots on you. Keep repeating until they run out of bullets and they're forced to reload. Once they do, punish them. You can also use another assault rifle. As soon as they start firing, fire at them as well. You'll tank some shots, but you'll take them down if you power through. For the flamethrower and thunder rod, there's not a lot you can do besides striking them as soon as you can interrupt their attack. However, if you have a snail shroom, you cut their damage to zero, making them not much of a threat. Mace haters are quite annoying because if you hit them during the wind-up, they'll easily strike you. For this reason, you need to patiently wait for them to miss before you strike them. You can use ranged weapons to trigger their attack early, but there's another cheese you can do. If there's a higher platform you could get to, you can land on their heads while they're charging to stagger them, then quickly follow up with an attack. For the M2G haters, aka the one with the big gun, I'd sneak around this one if I can. If I can't, I'd use all the general cheese tactics I taught a few minutes ago. If that doesn't work, I'd wait for the hater to stop aiming at me before trying to hit it. Seriously though, this is one of the most obnoxious haters I know of, and I usually save all of my special mushrooms for it. If you notice, mushrooms start becoming handy tools around these floors mainly because you can't carry much when entering these floors to begin with. Basically, what I'm saying is, make sure to consider leaving slots for mushrooms, as even a simple decoy shroom or crush shroom can save your life. Once you're comfortable with the mechanics up here, try your best to make it to floor 50. There are technically two paths you can take to get to this floor, but I personally take this path. It's because it's got 3 floors which can turn into either a 3-room or a shop room, which reduces the odds of me getting hit. And since you're starting on floor 42 and ending at 50, you're just essentially climbing 8 floors, so without those 3 floors, you're just going to be climbing 5 floors. I think the math is right. One last thing I'd like to note here is the role of the Express Pass. As we know, having an Express Pass active increases your inventory space. Up here though, the amount of items taken to floor 41 increases from 5 to 7, so you can get more flexible with the things you bring up here. Also, if ever you get unalived, it will cost you 250k kill coins to get your fighter back. You'll only need to pay 50k if you have an Express Pass activated. Follow these tips and you'll get to floor 50 in no time, and we can finally close the chapter on this game. Oh, what is it now? Motherfuck this more! So, I hope you all were entertained by that video. Click here if you want to watch another video of mine, which is selected by the magical YouTube algorithm. Please don't forget to gently click that like and subscribe button if you liked my content. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll be seeing you guys. Bye bye.